figured I'd do a video on this pond clean out. It's a pretty big operation here. So I pulled all the muck off the sides, and I went a little crazy. My definition of a clean out's a little different than other people's. So I got all the weeds off the side the first year, and then this next year I've been reshaping and forming the pond, as well as getting the muck off the very bottom. So all in there was probably like 3-4 feet of muck. It was 3 feet of muck. So I took all that muck off, and I got it so the excavator could actually drive in there. So it's solid clay bottom. And I pushed when I did it the first time. I pushed all the muck from this side kind of down this hill. This is the deeper part of the pond. So I pushed all that muck into this pit, kind of purposely, so I could get it all out down the road. So I drained it again, and I started pulling all this muck out, like I said, and I put it on the bank, and then bail it up a little higher. In the other video with the go-kart trucks in here, you could see where the water line was, and at that time there was no clay on the banks at all, and it was still about halfway full. Here's this trench that I drove the truck into. I also cleaned it up with the excavator after, but the truck at least freed up the water so it would drain. And then there's a pool at the end here. It's a pretty big pond, but there's this pool at the end, so I was trying to drain that more or less. Now I put these rocks here. It's going to block it until it goes up around that. Let's see, but that's alright. One side at a time. So after the banks were cleaned, I started relining it with clay. Just pulling all this stuff from the bottom back up to the top. I kind of went a little heavy here with the clay because there's ledge in here. And I thought maybe higher up on this ledge it might have been leaking. Another thing is getting around these tree roots. You can see where I'm dumping just straight clay from the bottom. A line of straight clay, that's all clay. Here's topsoil. Here's clay. Good clay. So even when this clay is mixed half and half with topsoil, it still packs pretty good. I'll show you up here, because that you got to mix it right to get it to stick. But so here's a bucket of clay, and then here's the topsoil line. Let me get back a little more. You see it right there. Maybe not. Brown, grayish teal, I call it. But so here's a ball that's just a 50-50 mix of this topsoil here and the clay. So that's like right here. I've mixed it 50-50, and you can see it still sticks pretty well. Now this one is all clay. It's a lot heavier, a lot denser. I mean, you can see it cracks when you squeeze it, but pretty good clay. Once there's water in there, it's all going to be always wet, so it shouldn't crack as much once there's water in there. But the 50-50 mix works pretty good too. So there is spots where I pushed it in, and some of that topsoil falls over the clay. And that's kind of why I just put 50-50 together to see if I do overlap, will it still pack down? And it looks like it still will. That should create a good seal. Like I said, here's 100% clay right off the top. You can see it's very pliable, holds its moisture content. Good clay. This pond's filled with good clay in the bottom. I don't want to dig too deep. I don't know where that line stops, but where I'm at now is pretty good. I'm hoping that bringing all this clay from the bottom and working it up, like I said, it was leaking at about the halfway point. So I'm trying to get above that halfway point with all new clay. And this is a pretty heavy wall right here. Probably will be 8 inches thick, probably 6-8 inches once I'm all done. I got a pile up there that I'm still gathering from. But this is a huge pond. It took a long time. I know why people don't clean out the pond this way. They just take the white stuff off the edges and get the weeds, the look of the weeds out, but really all the roots are still there. And I wanted all the roots out, and I wanted to start fresh, as well as all the muck in the bottom. We had snapping turtles in here, and having that muck in there is half the reason they were in here, along with trout. The trout brought them in, and the snapping turtle brought the leeches in, for sure. They have nests on the bottom of them, where they just like breed inside the snapping turtle crevices. Pretty gross. But they're all out now. I had 2 more when I was digging out the muck down there. I had 2 little ones, but I just rehomed them in the river. But yeah, pretty big operation. I'm hoping this is going to seal up 100%. There's also a pond on the other side, so I'll be pumping the water from that pond into this pond to help just fill it up quicker. I want to see it full and start washing slime or whatever into the little crevices it is going to have, so it'll seal up quicker in the long run, as well as dig out that little pond. But I just wanted to do a quick video on this. I should have been doing it from the start, but it's just such a long process already. If I added videotaping to it, it would have been a nightmare. So this is just kind of a get it done, as they always are. But it's looking good so far. You can't really see the angles of these banks, but I got them to the point where the excavator could track up and down. That's pretty much what I was shooting for, so you could track pack it in. I also dropped the blade, helped smooth it and pack it. You can see the walls are pretty smooth other than where the tracks lie. Stacked all these rocks with the excavator. Different look going on. I figured it's better to use the rocks inside the pond than have them in the walls of the pond. So that's one thing I will say, is keep the rocks out of the walls of the pond. Bring them down into the pond where you know you got a seal, and then work your clay or whatever you're using to seal your pond up the wall. Is the best thing to do. So even if you're clearing weeds out, like I cleared the weeds out the first year and set them on the bank to dry, so we were just renting an excavator, so I only got about half done with the hours we had, and everything was left on the bank to dry, all the clay, all the weeds. So by the time next year came around, it was all nice and dry. It was too mucky to even reuse when I pulled it out of there. But if you started in the beginning of the year, you probably wouldn't have to wait a full year. Just if it gets enough sun to dry it out, that's all you need. But I figured I'd show you the progress of this. I'm finally shaping it up and getting to a finish point here pretty soon. Ready to be done. A few more clay, a little bit more clay from the bank here that I got to line the edges with. I'm really going heavy around this tree. Don't want it leaking through the roots. This video is long enough. Hopefully it helps you with your pond. Pretty much work from the bottom up, and wherever your seal line is, you can kind of tell it leaves it pretty heavy. Like when mine was low, the weeds grew bad because it wasn't deep and it just got filthy. It also left the line on the edge to where the water level was at. Work from there up, or a foot below that, and work up with your slime or clay or whatever you plan on putting in there. And I would think you'll get it sealed up, but this is a pretty big one. I'm hoping this comes together, seals up nice. Like and subscribe.